Welcome to the Elevate Your Leadership podcast series with U.S. Navy Special Operations veteran, CEO, and hockey fanatic Bob Pizzini. Bob discusses leadership, success, failure, defining moments, and hard lessons learned with guests who are intentional in their approach to leadership. Leadership is a perishable skill. Use it or lose it. In this series, entrepreneurs, industry executives, academics, public figures, and other highly effective professionals share their formulas for success with you.
Welcome, everybody, to this episode of the Elevate Your Leadership podcast with me, your host, Bob Pizzini. If you've listened to my podcast before, you know that I love to have discussions with guests who not only bring great value to me and my organization, but these are people who I know will bring great value to you and your organization. Now, my podcast is all about leadership, and I encounter people who contribute to leadership, who contribute to organizations having good leaders, having good culture, and having good operations within the company or the corporation. I encounter these people all the time. And one of the people that I've encountered over the years is Holly Duckworth. Holly is a mindfulness expert, and Holly speaks and she trains and she travels, and she happens to be in Virginia Beach working with a large East Coast-based company at this time. So I was able to wrangle Holly onto the Elevate Your Leadership podcast. I'm going to read Holly's bio briefly, and then we're going to get into a wonderful discussion. Holly Duckworth is a trailblazing keynote speaker and applied mindful leadership advisor. As a contributor to the New York Times, producer host of the Everyday Mindfulness show, and columnist to countless industry publications, she works with stressed out leaders to create peace, presence, and profits. The 3 Ps. I love it. Holly's career began in the world of nonprofits and volunteer leadership, teaching thousands of association staff and volunteers how to reboot for success. Today, she takes the best of her strategic vision expertise, blends it with mindful leadership practices, and her event background curate experiential events that change hearts, minds, and companies. Our world has become mindless, for sure. Through mindfulness training, Holly works with you to know what mindfulness is and what it is not. Then apply your mindfulness techniques to produce more productive and profitable organizations. A few accolades real quick. Holly was named Meetings Today 2018 Trendsetter for her applied mindfulness work, and 2016 Smart Meetings Woman of the Year. Her podcast, The Everyday Mindfulness Show, and book were named top resources for mindfulness leadership in 2018. Holly's current book, Mindful Leadership, The Stress-Free Guide to Leadership, which I've read, is a bestseller, and her award-winning book, Control, Alt, Believe, Reboot Your Association for Success, has won 2 national awards. Holly believes mindfulness builds leaders and organizations that work for everyone. Awesome. Welcome, Holly Duckworth.
Well, it's good to see you. Thank you for having me. This interview is a practice in mindfulness. And how do you say yes when an opportunity shows up? And when I landed in Virginia Beach, drove by the iFly, I said, oh my gosh, I know Bob, and gave you a quick call, and here we are. And that's living leadership. Like, take advantage of the opportunities when they come your way. So I'm glad I could be here.
That's cool. So this process, this interview, this discussion is an exercise in mindfulness. Wow, what a great way to start. So expand on that just a little bit.
Well, Bob, I love that you say that, because every training program that I do, I start with something I call a moment to arrive. So I would invite your listeners, or if you're watching on YouTube, to do this with us. Bob, a moment to arrive is a strategy they use at Google to invite leaders and experts to take 60 seconds, and we won't do it that long today on the podcast, but just flip your phones off. Take a breath in and out, and center. Come fully present wherever you are. And what Google has found by implementing this a moment to arrive in their executive leadership meetings, they've been able to shorten meetings, make them more strategic, and get better outcomes, because You don't have that 5 to 7 minutes of, Ted's running in and he's still on the last meeting and Mary's on the last Zoom call. And sometimes just taking that moment to arrive can be a mindfulness practice.
That's pretty awesome. Have I arrived?
Well, you tell me.
Okay. Okay. I'm think I'm here. But I totally understand what you're saying. And of course, I've been in your audience in the past where you've done that exact exercise. And it really, I think what you're doing is, it's that presence. It's be here and be nowhere else. It's almost like when you start a yoga class.
Exactly. Yeah.
Okay. All right. So how did Holly Duckworth get into the space of mindfulness?
Oh, Bob, that's sort of a funny story. And I think it's so true for many of us in professional circles. You say yes and something shows up, and then you say yes and something else shows up. And yes, we go to school, we get, these degrees and get these experiences, and we think we're on, a path. Well, what we quickly learn is the path we thought was straight has lots of curves and adventures along the way. So I was a meeting and event planner for one of the first chapters of my life. Actually worked for the Salem Kaiser Volcanoes. I know you're a big sports fan. It was a baseball team.
Cool.
My first job out of college was doing baseball. Through my network, I was recruited to go work for Travel Portland, which is the Convention and Visitors Bureau in Portland, Oregon.
Sure.
From there, I started leading meetings and conferences, conventions, everything from the U.S. Figure Skating Championship to the National Middle School Association Conference. Did meeting planning for several years, and then MPI, Meeting Professionals International, recruited me to come work for them. And so I did association leadership for their 14 MPI volunteer chapters in the Western U.S.
Wow.
Did that till it was time to do something else. That still small voice inside me said, these skills in leadership and volunteerism need to be offered worldwide. So I left MPI and started my first company, Leadership Solutions International, which was an event planning and training company. That became the next yes, which was into mindfulness. And I started with my own personal mindfulness practice, training, learning, and then started infusing it into the work that I'm doing today.
Wow. So is it more mindfulness? Are you still in the event planning space at all?
Not directly in the event planning space. I think, our loves never leave us.
Mm-hmm.
And because I'm obviously speaking and coaching at events, I've always got my eye on the events space. And I'm often asked to go speak into that industry. So one of the big meeting event trade shows is called IMEX, the International Meetings Exchange, which is where all of the cities from all around the world come to sell their city to events. And I host a workplace wellness center there, or a mindfulness center every year. We offer 5 or 6 different trainings over the course of the week, and then about 15 different mindful meditations that are workplace central every single day for the course of that 4-day conference. So meetings never leave you.
Yeah. Wow. That is cool. And it's critical in business and in organizations today, as we kind of discussed in your bio, or as I kind of read in your bio. Let's go back even further. Where did you grow up?
Well, I grew up just south of Portland, Oregon. There's a town called Wilsonville, which is exactly between the capital, Salem, and Portland, right on I-5. I always joke, I say I grew up in a trailer park with all rights, responsibilities, and privileges therein. And I like to, I'm much more comfortable sharing that now.
Sure.
Because I think it's important for people to honor whether you came from the largest palace or castle, or if you came from very humble beginnings, that you have this opportunity to grow. My dad was a machinist at Freightliner making truck parts. My mom had the privilege of staying home and raising us. But it's, from that fertile soil and that love of family that I've been able to graduate high school, be the first generation college graduate, and then go on to make impact in the meetings industry and as a leader.
Yeah, that's awesome. And, we all come from different beginnings, and the playing field is generally level or even for everybody. And it's what you do with it, and so you clearly have, risen, you've taken advantage of the opportunities that were presented to you. And so I congratulate and applaud you on that. There's so many people who came from humble beginnings that are highly successful and influential. And most of the time, those humble beginnings are top of mind. They don't forget where they came from, and they have a great appreciation for accomplishment and things of that nature because of the humble beginnings. So thank you for sharing that. That's pretty cool. Let's stay back there for just a second. High school jobs. What did you do? What was kind of your thing, getting through high school? Because high school is a challenge for everybody.
Oh, this is funny. You may not even know this about me. My first job was I was Holly Hallmark. I worked in a
That's cool.
Hallmark shop selling cards. And I think that's why I still have my passion today for handwritten notes, birthday cards, anniversary condolences. But I learned so much in that job about customer service and interacting with people in the times of celebration, wrapping their birthday gift for their firstborn, or working with somebody to get a condolences card during a funeral. But yeah, it was really, really fun job for sure.
Holly Hallmark. I like that. So, it's going to stick with every time we talk going forward. It's, hey, Holly Hallmark, how you doing today? So it's going to stick. That it'll be in a text later on today. So that's cool. Okay. So that, and then what university did you go to, and how did you pick whatever your major was?
Well, you have so many choices coming out of high school to make. And I know now that was such a pivotal decision for me because I'm a first generation college student.
Mm-hmm.
I didn't know any better. You have a note here on your desk. It can be done. I knew anything could be done, but I didn't have a Rolodex or mentors. My parents hadn't gone to school, and I didn't even know what questions to ask about going to college. So I started throwing out applications here and there. At that time, believe it or not, we've had a little tie here, I was interested in meteorology.
Wow.
I wanted to be a weather girl.
A weather babe.
Yeah, weather babe. My dad reminds me to this day, that could be you, Dylan Dreyer on the Today Show. And I applied to local schools, and I actually applied to Purdue University, big school at the time, not having any concept of what this was going to cost or anything. Got accepted to every school that I applied to, including Purdue. And I'll never forget that day. I came bouncing in, handed my parents the letter, and expected them to be so excited for me. And instead, that energy of, yeah, you can't go there, we can't afford it, came back to me. And it was devastating in the moment, but also a recognition, okay, recalibrate. Ended up going to Marylhurst University, a local school, for 2 years. I got some of that undergraduate work out of the way, and I was working at Hallmark, and one of my friends came in, the mom of a friend came in and said, Holly, I think you should consider going to Linfield. I could never get in there. I don't have the grades. She looked at me and she said, are you kidding? Look at this massive, experience you have and all the other schools you got into. So I made the leap, transferred into Linfield College, which is a small school in McMinnville, Oregon, which is halfway between Portland and the Oregon coast. Finished my degree there, did an additional 2 years there while working in banking. I worked for Bank of America at the same time.
Ah, okay.
Because I knew that for me, a degree would open the door, but any experience that I had would be the ability to walk through that particular door.
Yeah, for sure. One of the things that I write about in Elevate Your Leadership, and I see you have your copy there, and thank you so much for reading and bringing your copy of the book with you. But one of the things I write about are the 3 things that I think are required for good leadership, and it's education, experience, and training. So, and we don't walk out of college with all those things. You have the education when you walk out of college, but the experience comes over time. And you, in your case, you built that experience, or you started to build that experience early. And then training, these kind of micro training events, kind of like what you're doing with the company you're working for here in Virginia Beach this week. These are these 1 or 2 day training events, but those have a cumulative effect, I've noticed, over my 26-year military career and 10 years in the private sector. So let's talk about your training and the things that you're doing now. How does mindfulness, to just kind of get to the thesis of this discussion, how does mindfulness affect leadership?
Well, if I can, Bob, I want to go back for just a second, because I think there's something that might help the listener.
Sure.
And that's recognizing a definition of what mindfulness is. I don't want to charge into this conversation and miss
I love
that.
defining things. Yeah. I'm surprised I didn't ask you that. I love definitions.
Oh yeah, I know. I saw that in your book, and that's part of it, is that lifelong learning piece. That's why I have your book with me, is being willing to pick up that book that might be something different or new for you, be it accounting or leadership. Right now I've got a book in my briefcase on community building,
Mm-hmm.
but all of that for me, I look at it through that lens of mindfulness. And so what exactly is mindfulness? Is it woo-woo? Is it taboo? Is it just the thing you're going to see on a magazine shelf right now? So I like to remind people, or let them know, mindfulness is a fancy word that's basically defined by John Kabat-Zinn as the practice of being fully present in the moment with non-judgment. And the key to that is two things: practice. This is not something that you're going to master. This is a skill that's going to be transformative throughout your life. You're going to have good days and bad days and interesting days. The second piece of that definition is without judgment. Our world is hardwired for judgment.
Big time.
Big time. So we're not bad people because we walk into a room and go, man, I don't like that wallpaper. We're not good people because we walk in and go, oh my gosh, I love this particular person. It's coming to that mindful awareness that says, wait, I'm judging that as good, or I'm judging that as bad, and letting that judgment go and staying open to what's possible for you in that moment. So framing up mindful leadership as every leader continuously practicing the ability to center and be present in the good times and in those challenging times, first for yourself as a personal skill, and second, to be able to be that present one-on-one with small groups and with larger groups as you advance the impact you're trying to have in this world.
Wow. So much to that. So much to that. One of the things that I've realized over the course of my lifetime is the mindfulness that you're talking about. You have to be, at least I think through my experience, I had to have a lot of experiences to even be able to embrace the concept of mindfulness. Like at 18, I wasn't ready for that. Or at 21, I wasn't ready for that. At 25, I probably wasn't ready for that. But beyond 25, I was probably ready to start embracing, because you're just unaware. I was just so unaware of so many things when I was younger. So how does, what's the point of entry, or when is it a good time to introduce mindfulness? I mean, we have mindfulness in the workplace, we have mindfulness at home. Please tell us, how do we introduce this and then maintain it?
You're asking the question I get asked most often. I speak on corporate stages, and almost always the question comes up not about the workplace from an audience. It comes up from, how do I do this with my kids?
Sure.
And people are surprised to learn your kids are already doing this. Mindfulness in the schools has been a movement that was just starting before the pandemic happened, and has really launched as a result of this. We know our kids are struggling mentally, and we're willing to invest time, money, and resources into that. It's doing that for ourselves as the adults in a relationship that often isn't happening. This isn't a skill that we learned when we were in school. So we assume our kids don't have it, but that's not necessarily true. So I'm inviting the people that I'm training in corporate workplaces to say, you don't have to go to an ashram or a mountaintop or a church or go be away from people to be mindful. In fact, what if mindfulness was one of your superpowers? Invite your kids into your practice. Invite your coworkers into the practice so that it becomes an integrated part of your particular day, like we did here on the podcast.
Sure.
You could do that type of thing. One of the most popular practices is called STOP, and anybody can do it and invite their kids into it. And it's simply an acronym, STOP, stop, take a breath, observe, and proceed. And, finding a place throughout your day that could fit. For me, I say to adults, especially anytime you're driving, or if you're on mass transit, or you're on your bike or your skateboard, you're going to come across a stop sign. You're going to come across a stoplight. Instead of, oh my God, I have to stop. Wait, this is a moment for mindfulness. Take a breath, look to the left, look to the right, and proceed. So mindfulness can be anywhere you are.
So that's brilliant. I think that is really brilliant. And very infrequently do I stop, if you will, but I do it very consciously at times, like this morning, for example. The traffic was like unusually thick. And so the 20-year-old Bob or the 30-year-old Bob would be like, get the hell out of my way. I got someplace to go. What's going on up there? Right. But the 57-year-old Bob says, oh, okay, I'm going to be at this traffic signal for a little while. Let me get that podcast going, or let me just be in the moment, take advantage of this brief little moment, without becoming a hazard on the roadway. But I totally get that. Totally get that. What about, you mentioned kids, and my kids are 18. I have twins, a son and a daughter, and it's really cool. And I have to think about what you just said and how it would apply to each of my children. My children are very different, even though they're twins. They're two completely different people. But have you worked with adolescents or teens, or the question you're asked the most? How do we incorporate this? I know you kind of told us, but specifically, like if you have a teen who seems to be not following true north, if you will, how can parents use mindfulness in that capacity?
Well, I've twins in my life too. My husband has 22-year-old twin girls who also are just human beings who share the same birth date, very, very different people doing life in the ways that is highest and best for them. And I think as parents, it's really important. And again, as executive leaders, this is a skill that could transcend families. Put your ears on your heart.
Wow.
And take a moment to not just listen to what they're saying to you, but use your skill of empathy and compassion to listen to what they're not saying to you. And being really intuitive about the questions that you ask. And then listen with your ears on your heart. In today's AI, chatbot, technology-enabled world, that quote by Maya Angelou still applies. People will they may not remember what you say, but they'll remember how you made them feel.
Yeah, love that.
As somebody who hasn't had kids in my life my whole life, being a stepmom and being in various aspects, I think the way I've been able to make the most difference in children's lives and in stage life or in speaker life is mindful, be fully present, put my ears on my heart, ask a question, and give people time to respond. And that's what I'm so excited about as we reemerge and redesign workplaces and family lives going forward. Is nobody's ever rebuilt after a pandemic, thank goodness. So any place within us that we're saying we have to have the answers is an opportunity to say, maybe we have the opportunity to ask the best questions right now and really create, what is family life going to look like for our family without judgment, being fully present to the resources, the energy, the lifestyle, where you live, and make it the highest and best you can for yourself.
Wow. So many things come to mind as you say that. One of them is the non-judgment. Again, my experience, the more I can be non-judgmental, the easier it is to see things more clearly and get through whatever that situation is. So that's a daily exercise unto itself. You have to tell yourself, I have to tell myself, don't judge the person or the situation. Let's just examine the factors here and move forward. The other thing that comes to mind, and this will sound kind of silly to a lot of people, but I was reading this other book, and the author talked about, when it comes to doing chores at home and things like that, rather than consider them a burden, consider them a privilege. I get to prepare dinner for my family, as opposed to somebody who has no family and doesn't have that opportunity. I get to do these different things, which seem like mundane chores, and they seem like things that are unpleasant. But in the grand scheme of things, they can be, and they are very meaningful. So there's, I don't know if that's mindfulness there, but something else that I thought was really important. Okay, so you've authored.
Wait, Bob, I want to add something to that I think will serve here is a lot of times parents accidentally say, oh my gosh, I'm so exhausted and I have to take Johnny to baseball practice, or I have, my whole weekend is full of, kids activities.
Right.
And I like to remind people that's not a privilege afforded to everyone. And so that does speak to that practice of gratitude, that there are many men and women and couples out in the world today who are trying to have children, and that for whatever reason isn't showing up in their life experience. So keeping that gratitude at every level in your life, even on the day you're a little exhausted. I have a mindfulness practice where if you're accidentally in a negative spiral, oh, I'm so exhausted. Oh, I'm so exhausted, that take the first letter of the negative word and flip it to a positive word. So exhausted becomes excited. I'm in grief becomes gratitude. So, everybody has a chapter and we wear a lot of hats, parenthood being a big one, if that's in your life, or CEO could be a big one, but utilizing that you were just talking about, that sense of gratitude is a huge one. In this presentation I did give yesterday, I gave the gratitude tip. Oprah made gratitude journals famous.
Okay.
And it's great. It's great. It's wonderful. But I'm not one who needed to carry one more little journal or have a journal. I mean, I've got libraries of books on my nightstand.
Yeah.
So I created about 3 years ago a Google Doc, make it an Excel spreadsheet, something I could carry with me all of the time.
Okay.
And
In electronic format.
In an electronic format. And I just, date what I'm grateful for. And every Friday before I leave my office, I just pull out that Excel spreadsheet and I put down personal, professional, fun things that I'm grateful for. And I started the practice, and then more things to be grateful for came, and more positive things came from it. And every year I just add another tab to the Excel spreadsheet. Now I've had multiple years of this tab, and it's fun to get to go look back, and things that you might not remember that you had the opportunity to do show up again, and you might do them again or practice them again. And people in the audience really loved that practice. I think your listeners might like it too, as a way to keep track of what you're grateful for and watch it expand in your life.
Wow. I love that. So we did, in my household, we did the jar, and it was fun when we did it. And it's funny because my wife, she's like, hey, I don't see the pieces of paper in the jar. She's like, tomorrow's Friday. Those pieces of paper need to be in the jar by tomorrow, right? So a little stress as we develop gratitude and appreciation. But then when we open the jar and we share it, and then I say to my daughter, why did you write this? Just that little 30-second story behind it. Those are great little moments of exploration and understanding. And so I think that over time, the way you just mentioned that, over time, to look back and extract the value, there's tremendous value there that can benefit you for the rest of your life. I love that. Okay, are we ready to go to books? Can we talk about the 4 books you've written and why you wrote them and what's next?
Again, leaders have to be willing to say yes to the thing they thought they would never do. I never went out saying, oh, I'm going to be an award-winning best-selling author. But you say yes, and suddenly a word becomes a sentence, becomes a paragraph, becomes a blog becomes a chapter that becomes a book. And I go through each of those steps, that if you're out there listening to this and you got something you want to say, that it didn't just become a book, be willing to just put in those little seeds that are going to grow. So that was probably 2014.
Wow.
I had this concept for a book, and at the time it was called Control-Alt-Delete. Reboot your association for success. I'm dating myself.
Yeah,
that was the blue screen of death days, when you hit the buttons on your screen and it went blue screen.
Yeah.
And wrote it all out. It was all on association leadership. And the very last day I was showing it to a friend. I said, no, Holly, this is the wrong tie. This is not right. And I said, what? She goes, believe. And I go, I didn't hear you. She goes, Control-Alt-Believe. This is all about what you believe about your organization. I was like, oh my gosh, you're so right. And we, made a few tweaks to the book and rewrote it. and started selling it. That became my first speaking tour. I did a virtual book tour. I had 50 friends in 50 states. Everybody hosted an online book tour. Now, this was like 2014, this was before Zoom.
Yeah.
But you start sharing with people. So that was the first book on association excellence. The next one was the Mindful Leadership, the Stress-Free Guide to Mindful Leadership. That's totally different take. It's an adult mandala coloring book. Mindfulness, scientifically proven that when you color, you reduce your stress. You can even do it on the podcast today. Just take a minute and think about the smell of a color crayon and feel what happens in your body. So I took the every letter of the alphabet, A to Z, and put a positive word with it and a positive story. The next one is Everyday Mindfulness, From Chaos to Calm in a Crazy World. That's a daily inspirational reader. You talk in your book about, every day doing something to center yourself.
Mm-hmm.
And this book is a guidebook for people. So it has a daily quote, a place for you to pick your word of the day, and an inspirational story. And each month has a different theme to it. March, yesterday, I was reading the book, and it's, everywhere I am is exactly where I need to be. And it was a quote from a singer-songwriter, Amy Steinberg. And I had everybody in the room sort of pick their word for the day that could ground them in moments of challenge. And then the fourth book is called Sell More, Stress Less, 52 Tips to be a Mindful Sales Professional. And I've co-authored that with a man named Eric Szymanski. And that takes his work in the high stress field of sales. He was a top seller for Hilton, Marriott, Starwood, and Disney, and my mindfulness background. And we weave them together into a tip a week book for sales professionals to have a positive mindset with affirmations. It's a journal where you can journal your thoughts about the sales process in a mindful way, and then stories of success.
That's really cool. So this man you co-authored with, Eric Szymanski, also happens to be your husband. And so that was that a fun project, co-authoring?
It is a fun project. But again, you have to let go of the attachment and stay in the now. I made a commitment. We were going to make that book have a birth date. And if you're an author out there, any major project you want to do in your life, if you give it a deadline, a lifeline, as I call it, the day it's going to come to life, it helps you stay motivated through the process. So our lifeline was going to come out on National Salesperson's Day, which happened to be like December 13th of 2018. So we reverse engineered success. We had 36 days. We wrote, designed, edited, and made it a #1 new release in 4 categories in 36 days. Now, I don't tell you that to go out and do it that way, but find your pathway to that. If you make a dentist appointment or a haircut appointment with mindfulness for your self-care, you're not going to miss that appointment. With mindfulness for the commitment you made to the person providing that service to you, you're going to make that appointment. So make an appointment with yourself, whether it's writing a book, a blog, having an experience with your family, traveling, that you're going to make it happen. And when you give it a lifeline, it happens. So that's how Eric and I wrote the book. And now we're speaking and coaching together with that book.
Yeah, so that is incredible as well. I love the way you changed the word deadline to lifeline. Is that Holly Duckworth, like, original content? Because that's brilliant.
It is the way I do it. I haven't heard it from anybody else. I don't know if it's original content per se, but so often things die when we complete them, or it's a deadline. For me, energetically, giving it a lifeline gives it excitement and energy. You talk all about your book, about how the energy you put around something matters. Words matter. So I don't call mine a bucket list. I call it a life list. What do I want to do with my life?
Yeah. Holly, this is just fascinating. So are all of your books listed on your website? What is your website?
HollyDuckworth.com is a great way to find us.
Okay.
Leadership Solutions, INTL is also out there for Eric's and my work together.
Okay, good. And are all of your books available or listed on your website?
Yeah, they're on the website and they're all on Amazon.
Okay. All right. That's great. This is fascinating. And I've only read one of your books, the one you co-authored, but I'm definitely interested in the others. What haven't I asked you? What is of value to the listeners? You have so much to offer, Holly. What can we offer as we wrap things up here?
Oh, wow. That's a big question.
That's what everybody says when I ask it.
It's a big question. I think I'm going to leave him with a question, which is the question that I asked Eric when he entered into my life looking for mindfulness. And it was the question that really changed his outlook on being a stressed out salesperson. And that question was, does it have to be this way? Does life have to be stressful? Does life have to be chaotic? And your mindset, your ability to control and flow with the experiences you're having in life and make it most positive can be key. And ultimately he said, no, my life doesn't have to be this stressful. And from that decision, he was able to recreate the people, the places, the experiences that he wanted to have as his life experience. And I think that question can be a really powerful mindfulness experience for people as we come out of this pandemic, to really choose mindfulness as we go forward.
Holly Duckworth, what a fascinating discussion. How fortunate am I, and how fortunate are our listeners that you and I were able to connect during your business trip here to Virginia Beach. Thank you so much for coming on the Elevate Your Leadership podcast. Thanks
for having me.
And we are out.
Do you want to add a piece about me jumping in the tube?
Oh, yeah. Let's go ahead and start recording. Thanks. And I forgot to do the commercial break too. I get dialed into the discussion. That's why I need a producer. And I think my next one, I'm going to have a producer, because I get so dialed into the discussion. I don't follow my run of show. So okay. So we'll just, so Holly, while you were here, you had a chance to fly. You experienced the iFly Virginia Beach flight experience yesterday. And what do you think?
Well, I love that we get to do an after the show. All the big shows have an after the show, and we get so excited talking. Yeah, I mean, we opened my show by saying, you say yes and you show up, and what are those opportunities around you in your life? So we drove by iFly. I said yes, gave you a call, and the experience at iFly is absolutely a yes for anybody. And I have to give the behind the scenes on it, which is, you have to know that there's one thing on my life list that I never had to do: skydiving. And I didn't actually remember that was what we were doing, and that was on my never have to do list until I'm in the training room. And if you are in that category that I was in, say yes to iFly, because you have the opportunity to go through and meet your coach, and that person companions you through the whole experience, that you feel greeted and heard and seen, from watching the training video and learning the hand signals, to getting your earplugs and your eye protection. You feel so safe and ready to have the adventure that's custom for you. You get in a small group. Some of people have done it before, and they want to go high and have learning for how to turn. And then you have some people who are brand spanking new, and they're terrified, and they're not really sure what they've even gotten into. But that's a metaphor for life and for leadership.
For sure. Yeah.
And you get to do this in world-class technology, from the tube to the cameras to the video. I mean, everything is so state of the art. So we go in, we get our locker after we've had our training, put on our helmets, get some photos, pre-flight photos. And once you enter the tube, you have that mindful moment of putting your hands in the right place, putting your feet in the right place. And at least for me, you don't do it right the first time, but how do you trust yourself and listen and use all of your senses to get in the best position for your flight experience? And I had the opportunity to do it a few times. You come out, you watch your video if you want to, and then you go back in and you tweak it, and then you get to go again. And I love that about the iFly experience, because it's much like life. You're refining, and you get to be a little bit better. And the next time you get a little bit better, but you got to start somewhere. And by diving in to just say yes to life and see what shows up. It was a great experience here at iFly, and it is a metaphor for my life. And I think for leaders going forward, if you say yes, you'll never be disappointed at the experiences you can have.
Holly, I've owned and operated iFly Virginia Beach for 9 years, and you just described the flight experience better than I ever have over the entire 9 years. That was incredible. You had Zach as your instructor, and Zach, like all of our instructors, we are very deliberate to be in the experience with you. So rather than deliver the experience to you, we want to participate with you. And I think you just really described that very well. So it's a real conscious effort on our part. The other thing is mindfulness. When you are in the flight chamber and flying, like you said, a little hand movement here or there, and it really affects your flight trajectory. And you have to be in that moment. Talk about, the need to be mindful, to be right here, right now. You can't be thinking about work when you're in there, flying, getting your body positioning right. So wow, you really described that very well.
Well, if I can add to it, and I know we're on time, but thinking about it from a business owner perspective or a meeting planner perspective, we have in meetings, we talk about before, during, and after. You've got all the work you do before you go to the meeting, once you get on site at a meeting or conference, and then after. You've been intentional about that here at iFly too. When you walk into this facility, clean, impeccable, you interact with a human being. I think, again, in a chatbot world, meeting a human who greets you in a warm way. Yes, you're guided to a technology device where you fill out the proper forms and everything. And from that moment forward, everything is personalized. You get a wristband with your name on it. Your instructor calls you by name. And that's all before you even start. Then, as we were just talking about, in the chamber, you're having this experience, and you have the sights, the sounds, the smells, the taste, the feel, like all of that. If you allow yourself to relax and center fully into it, and then you have the post experience when you come out of the chamber. If you want, you can get pictures again. You take off your flight suit, you get to learn about how it's all handled.
Your hair looks wonderful at that point.
Your helmets go. But again, safety, health, and security is in all aspects of it. And then after the fact, you get this personalized certificate, and we'll make sure in the video, if you want, you get to see my certificate.
Absolutely.
But you get a memento of what are the things that you got to learn and experience, and the photos and the video to prove it. So if you're thinking about iFly, do it. But also, if you're thinking about it as a business owner, come out and see what Bob's created here and how you can infuse that before, after, and during experience to have a world-class experience.
Wow. Thank you so much. Holly Duckworth, thank you so much for coming in studio today and being on the Elevate Your Leadership podcast.
Thank you for listening to the Elevate Your Leadership podcast. To contact Bob directly or to learn more about how Bob can advance you and your organization through leadership training, team building, executive coaching, and public speaking, visit robertpizzini.com. Robert, Pizzini.com, and connect with him on LinkedIn.